So we are going to continue to look at text structure. In previous weeks, we looked at the text structure related to informational text, nonfiction text. Now we're going to shift our study to look more at narrative writing, literary texts, and just really how they're organized. And so what is structure? Once again, as a review, we talk about the structure of something as how it's put together, how it's built, how it's formed. And so when you're building a house, you can see in this next one, you can plan a design from the beginning and really shape the whole thing where you have an overall plan. That structure really foundationally has to be built from the bottom and built up. And that is similar to what we're talking about when we talk about text structure. Text structure is the term used to explain how the author organizes the details of their story. And so as you are planning as a writer how to put things together, you can study different mentor texts and texts to see how authors do this. And so there's really three kind of type of text we're going to be looking at this week. Stories, probably the most common, familiar to you. Different types of books and novels tell a story. A lot of times you'll see they have chapters. There's drama a lot of times where the characters go through some sort of conflict or story. Elements where we've studied a story arc and a story plot. There might be headings, to the title of the chapters, but overall the structure, like we said, is more of a story arc or a story plot, or even a shark fin, somebody might call it. And so this is where at the beginning we are learning about the characters. Eventually a problem is introduced and the characters have to deal with that problem, and that is called the rising action. We talked about the most intense, important part of the story, the turning point of the story. How does the character deal with all of this conflict? That is the climax, and then wrapping up the story, the falling action and the resolution where we wrap up the story. That is the organization of a narrative text. And you could see a chapter, different types of chapters a lot of times give you, when you're trying to identify, give you a clue that that's probably a story. There's also drama. Dramas, when we talk about this, plays, you'll see they have organized into different acts, Act 1, Act 2, different scenes where the characters or the different actor or actresses are getting their roles, and they come in and off, on and off of the stage, or in the text you will see an entering of that particular character if you think about a reader's theater. And so the setting might change and you have different props, and as you set up a stage, you've seen these before. So when you think about this and you're looking at it as an example, when you see you have different roles of characters reading a script, there might be action scenes where it gives you details that are not actually spoken or said, but it's stage directions or different things related to acting out. That right here is a drama, which also is going to fit into kind of the narrative stories that we are studying. And then finally, poetry, which a lot of you are familiar with poetry. Poems have things called stanzas. We've talked about this year. A stanza is similar to a paragraph, but only for poems. And so we'll look at that. There's different verses, different lines. There might be a rhyming pattern. If the first and second line rhyme, it's a AA, and then this third and fourth line rhyme, BB. So you have a AABB pattern in a stanza, or it might be first and third line rhyme, second and fourth line rhyme. That's a ABAB pattern for rhyming. Here's an example of a poem. We're going to talk about Langston Hughes and the different poems that he wrote and the impact he had. Here's an example, and you can see when you're trying to identify. You see shorter lines, you see things in stanzas, there's a space there to separate it. So what are some of the terms that we're going to be using, the different elements of poems and stories and dramas? Well, like I said, a stanza is basically how you organize a poem into different parts. And so the poetic lines are grouped together by stanzas. Dialogue you'll see in stories where it's the characters speaking. If it is something where it's a drama, you might see a script, or within a story, you'll see quotation marks as the characters are speaking. Conflict, like we said with the story arc, that's an important element of making a story interesting, building up a problem into the story, and that conflict grows and we wonder, what is the character going to do next? That creates some tension, and that creates the reader, that gives them that sense of what's going to happen next, and they want to keep reading. So as you think about these different terms thrown out there and these different ideas of whether it's a story, whether it's a drama, whether it's a poem for poetry, this week we're going to be thinking about the structure and how these different texts are built and organized by the author. And then you'll also have a chance to do some writing this week of narrative writing to organize different text structures for your own stories.